Hello, everybody. Welcome to probably my 10th or so update on this project. We're now on the home stretch. There's less than 10 days to go. It's currently day 21, I believe, of this project. And we just received an announcement yesterday that we we have the opportunity to demo our project tomorrow. So I'm trying to rush and try and just improve my presentation layer, I guess. I've been mostly focusing on the behind the scenes, learning how to network, learning how to collate data, learning how to build APIs, which is something that I've actually now done. Also, obviously you can see I've done a little bit of a rehash of my UI, so recolored, repositioned some things. It's probably not where it will finish, but I'm just leaving it at that for now. What I managed to work on in the last couple of days is focusing on compression. I've found that quite a few people were saying when I shared the link that it's taking too long to load or it's not loading. I just have a black screen, and that's because it was actually 40 megabytes of data, which is quite a lot for people which potentially don't have a strong connection from their country to my country, my server. My server's hosted in Australia. So, and especially then if 10 people loaded the page around the same time. So I've been working on compression and using a few different techniques. It's taken me a few hours. Within Unity, I might actually quickly open it up under build settings, and I'm only focusing on WebGL, which allows me to upload my game into HTML5. I've been going through different compression options and finding which compression options I can apply, what do they do, and does the game still work? So some compression options actually break different parts of the game depending on the assets that you're using. So for example, if I used this compression technique called stripping, depending on the stripping level, which I believe has to do with text stripping. But anyway, depending on the level of compression that I use, it produces code flaws, and the game essentially doesn't run. So I've managed to get it down to the point though that I can export the game down to about 10 megabytes, and I'm finding once I do exports, the best way for me to analyze the size and why it's so large is opening up something called the editor log and looking for a build report, and it gives me an idea. So here, this is my old builds, 30 megabytes. Might go down to the very end. So we're currently at about 12 megabytes, and I can see that a high volume is based on textures, and I've been deleting textures, deleting fonts that aren't being utilized. So there's this 1 megabyte font here that I'll need to, actually I've already removed that, so that shouldn't be in the next build. There's some weird wastage space here from some Unity packages. I'm trying to research if there's any way to remove these. Simply deleting them, they seem to keep being regenerated, but they're not used within the game, so it's sort of pointless having this film grain. That's a story for another day. But anyway, so we've worked on compression. Also something I'm super stoked. But I don't know if anyone else has this experience where you think something just is so hard. Well, not hard, but you feel like something that you don't know would be hard to learn. And one thing I've never played around with is APIs. I've probably not built this API in the best way, but I didn't realize, at least for me and my skill set, I know a little bit of everything, not a lot about anything in particular. So I was just fortunate to find out that, because I've been wanting to bring data into the game, I've been wanting to bring chain data in so people can choose their fractals. But I've worked out the quickest way for me to do this is actually to have collated all the data. Managed to pull some of this data from Discord members. I originally wrote a Python script that was pulling data from the blockchain. It was going to take 2 days, but then I found out someone else already had this data. So we've got the name of the fractal, the faction, and all their attributes, essentially, and the mint address even. So at some point in the future, I can actually look up the fractals in people's wallets based on the mint address and then pull through the attributes. So I've got a bit of a future plan there. Also the image, not that I need the image because I'm constructing that from in-game sprites that my daughter has drawn. If you haven't seen the video, ask me, I'll share it later. My daughter draws them on her Wacom. Okay, so this is my database. Now this is hosted on one of my servers that you would normally host websites on. This is PHP My Admin. This is a database tab which has 100,000 entries in it, and apparently only 98,000. I don't know what. Why am I missing 1,000? What? Okay. Oh yeah. I didn't notice that before. Anyway, I'm missing 1%. Oh, I'm going to fix that in the future. I was hoping this was done and dusted. All right. Well, anyway, what I've ended up doing is I thought, oh, this would be so hard to connect from my game to my database, and I didn't realize that what I needed to do is create something called an API, or an API endpoint. I can create it on my server, and the way that I worked out how to do that, fortunately, I was hardly even researching. I just stumbled across someone creating an API. And all I had to do is for my website, and there's probably, I don't know if there's some security issues here or not. It's just people could do, SQL injection or whatever attack protocols there are. I haven't researched them just yet, but essentially I've created a PHP file that I can actually skip forward because I've actually got my password exposed in this. Okay, so I had to skip forward because I actually have my password exposed in this file. But essentially what it does is it passes in my credentials to the database, and then it performs a get query on the URL parameters that a user goes to, passes in. So this file that I've created is api.php, and this is on my server, on my website, on my domain. When you open up this file, it then executes a query to the database. So this is essentially a read-only layer. Now, I can also pass in something called a query parameter. So I can do question mark, whatever I want to pass in. In this instance, I know that I can pass in query parameters. I could say, I live at equals Australia. Now, that would get sent to my script. My script would not be expecting to receive an I live at variable. So my script will just do nothing with it. It will just omit it. It will ignore it. But I know my PHP script or my PHP API is expecting to receive something called name, and I can search for any fractal based on whatever I'm putting here. So I could search for Gary V and press enter. And straight away, it's returning me that. I could search for, I'm just thinking about other ones that I know exist. I think Mike got boob. This is Mike from Fractal. So yeah, and I can also, pass in other attributes that I know exist. So power equals 100, and it just dumps a whole bunch of JSON data. JSON prettify. I don't know what the best way is to. I can do it in Chrome console, try and prettify this data, but you can see it's a JSON file, and if you format it, this is essentially how it is all presented, more readable. Going back to my script to have a quick explanation on how that works. Now that I've got the password hidden, this section here, if I was to print this information out, that's everything after the question mark that I've put into the URL. And this is the syntax to retrieve that information. So this very piece of information here calls out to that query string and says, find where the variable is name and return me what comes after the equal sign. So if I type it up top, question mark, name equals, what I've got highlighted up there, Chris, is what is found for is what's returned. If I do an and sign, so you can have your query strings broken up by ands, you can pass in multiple parameters like velocity equals 40 in this instance because there's two ands. I think I've got it set up as ORs, so it will just return both, but I won't. I'll quickly check that in another. Yeah. It'll find wherever it's Chris or wherever the velocity is 40. So that's how you capture each piece of information. So it's finding the name that the user, i.e. me, has put in through the URL. It's then storing it against the name variable. So now I've got all this information based on the URL. I then construct something called an SQL statement, which is what is actually connecting to the database. So we're already connected actually above with my password that I've had to cut out. And here at this point in time is where we now construct an SQL statement to that database with our password based on this criteria. So this is the where condition. So we're selecting from the Fractal table. Fractal table is what I had loaded into PHP. So this is my database called Lecca_Fractal. That's the database that I connect to. Within that, we are now choosing which table, which set of data are we going to run our query over. Okay, so this is select star, so select all columns, is what it's saying there, from the Fractal table where the name column is equal to the variable that we've collected above from the query string, or the faction, or the min, yada, yada, yada. I was trying to do AND conditions, but I don't know enough about the PHP syntax, because what it's doing is, if I don't pass in every single variable and it's AND conditions, it says, those variables are blank, so don't return me information unless spin is blank, altitude is blank. So it's actually like, blank, it was returning me nothing every time. So I've done all for now, because that's well and truly enough for my purpose. I'm literally only passing in one variable at a time. The intent for this API is to allow my game to call out to this URL and pass in the name. So a player can choose a name of their fractal that they know, just quickly type in Chris, whatever, and it'll ingest the attributes of that fractal into my game. Super simple. And then essentially the query above must be passing it into this result field. No, I'm wrong. So this here, okay, so this is the SQL variable, which is holding the whole string of the select statement. Here is a result variable, which is going to be holding in the output of this function call. So the MySQL query function is being sent two arguments, one being the connection, which I've defined up above with my password and database details, two being the SQL query. And then if that's successful, there's this if statement down below, which says if the result, when you simply do if result, it's going to either turn a boolean and it's going to say true or false. It will be true if it holds data, it will be false if it holds no data. So these if statements, if true, just by default, if true, the very first set of curly braces will execute. So in this instance, if the result has data, then perform this while loop function. So initializing the I integer to 0, and it's just going to keep counting through and finding in that result file, return me each of the bits of information in JSON format. So yeah, that's essentially the output there. And that's it for that section. What else? Yeah, that's mostly all I've achieved so far over the last couple of days, trying to learn APIs, building APIs, uploading data, compression. Take a little bit of time, but really, I've learned a whole lot. I'm so stoked. This is stuff I've actually thought about years ago. How do I do this? And I was too busy to find out. And I've always wanted to know. It's actually amazing how satisfying it is to finally have connected the dots together. What I'm hoping to do now, I've got less than 24 hours before we have the demo presentation. I have, just looking at my list, I would like to have the 4 fractal sprites that my daughter's drawn into the game. I need to compress them correctly so it doesn't, they need to be factors of 2, the sprite size. So if you say had an image loaded into your game that was 1701 times, I don't know, let's say 3 by 3 was dimensions. It's not a factor of 2, so you can't compress it as well. It needs to be 2 by 2, 4 by 4, 6 by 6 pixels, 32 by 32, whatever. And then it should be able to compress effectively. So I've got to go make sure my daughter's fractals are according to those sort of specs and compress them, get them in the game, and then do the coding to allow the user to select. Actually, no, I won't even allow the user to select. I'll just make the user select a name, and that will then come up with rich fractal and attributes that they come up with. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, and then also ability to shoot. I wouldn't mind adding the ability to shoot. I just want to just add another kill mechanic in there that you know, once you're massive at the moment, there's not really a way that you can lose. So whether I get something in before tomorrow's demo or not, I'm not sure. So yeah, I think I'm actually going to work on this API for the rest of today for tomorrow. So the ability to choose a character by name, which will then choose one of their 4 fractal colors, the 4 fractal sprites. And that's probably a priority 1. And then secondary after that is the ability to shoot. And then after that, or actually I might do shoot first because that might be a quick, easy win. And then after that, maybe do some leaderboard synchronization, improvements. But that's it for today. Fair few updates. I won't bother playing the game because there's not really a lot to show there. A little bit of menu tizzying up, but that's about it. So thanks for your time. Cheers, guys. I'll see you in the next update.